Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Freedom Convoy continues to roll into Ontario. Today we chatted with a Manitoba trucker who has a powerful message for our Prime Minister. The Justice Centre has launched a lawsuit against the Trudeau Liberals seeking to strike down the vaccine mandate for air travelers. And we have details of a Christ Centre program that has been helping Albertans battle addictions for over 30 years.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Freedom Convoy, which left Delta, BC last weekend, has made its way into Ontario. Thousands of truckers are taking the message of end all mandates to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals in Ottawa. Elmer Penner is one of the Manitoba truckers who's participating in the rally. He joins us now from Blind River, Ontario, just outside of Sault Ste. Marie. Elmer, what has the journey been like for you so far?
Well, it's been life-changing just to see the support, not even just so much the truckers, but all the support we're getting from people along the road, beside the road. You know, we go through towns and there's just people joining, like coming to the road and just supporting us. Small roads, there's, you know, one person, two person holding up signs, holding up flags. One location we were at, there's a person from he came 90 kilometers just to come and cheer us on. They're offering us foods wherever we stop, handing out bags. They just want to do anything they can to help us go on this, to help us go to Ottawa.
Let's say Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is watching our program right this minute. What message do you want to send to him?
I think you need to resign. We need a new leader. All mandates need to be taken off. We've been suffering. Our kids have been suffering. And that's the people that touch me the most is the children, because we got children. I think we got children begging, pleading for us men to stand up for them. And it's not so much for the truckers. I know it started as the truckers because that's what gave us the or the right to fight. We've had nurses fighting for us. We've had our nurses standing up and asking for help, police officers, but we were never really given the opportunity. And I think part of it is also timing. The timing is right. There's more and more people realizing that this is not about a disease anymore. There's something else going on. We've just been blown away with the support that we're getting everywhere.
So Elmer, how long are you willing to stay in Ottawa?
We have a MOU that we're waiting to have signed. Memorandum of Understanding. We want all mandates gone. COVID is as far as we want it. We want it to end. We know the disease is there. We know we'll have to keep living with it. I think it's been around for many years, but we want all the mandates. We want our freedom back. That's the main signs that people hold up is freedom, freedom, freedom. That's what we want. No more mandates, freedom.
Thanks so much, Elmer. That was Winnipeg trucker Elmer Penner joining us from Blind River, Ontario. A Barrie, Ontario trucker says he, like many others, should not be forced to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, and all of Ottawa's mandates need to be lifted.
I don't think the mandate should be forced by government. It should be freedom, people's choice. You want to be vaccinated? Go ahead, your choice. I don't want to be vaccinated. I don't want to. That's my choice. I was going non-stop until this started last Saturday. Okay. Now I cannot go. I cannot work no more.
Okay. And what do you want the government to do? Like, you're going to Ottawa, what are you doing?
They should lift it. Mandate crossing border for truckers. They should dismiss all the mandates.
The GoFundMe campaign supporting the truckers with Freedom Convoy 2022 has now raised over $7.2 million. There have been close to 92,000 donations from over 21,000 people. There have been some pretty big donations as well, including one over $25,000. The organizer of the GoFundMe, Tamara Litch of Medicine Hat, says the funds will be used to support the truckers, including fuel, tires, food, and shelter. Now, the first trucks in the Freedom Convoy protesting the Canadian government's mandates rolled into Ottawa. Organizers were hoping to have close to 50,000 trucks converge on the nation's capital this weekend. A number of truckers say they will not leave until all mandates are scrapped and or Justin Trudeau resigns as Prime Minister. Not all truckers are in support of the convoy, however.
It's ridiculous.
How come?
Well, we need to be vaccinated. You want to bring it back and forth over the borders? You want a job? Get vaccinated.
Hundreds of people also came out to wave signs and Canadian flags on the sides of the Trans-Canada Highway near Lincoln, New Brunswick, in support of the Atlantic convoy that is also headed to Ottawa. Truckers from as far away as Newfoundland and Labrador also joined in. As far as supply chain issues are concerned, organizers say there have been no disruptions caused by the Freedom Convoy. Federal Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole says unvaccinated truckers rolling into Ottawa this weekend is a symbol of the frustration they feel toward Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his pandemic policies. He says he will meet with the truckers as they roll into our nation's capital.
After 2 years, Canadians are tired. They're tired because they followed the rules. We've worked from home. Our kids have not been in school. We've shifted our life. Most Canadians got the jab. We've all been trying to follow the rules. And this year started out just like last year, with lockdowns, with curfews, with division. And that's only getting worse. And the thousands of people coming here in the next few days, the trucker convoy, is a symbol of the fatigue in our country right now. The very fact that the Prime Minister won't listen or hear these voices shows the degree of division that exists in our country. Conservatives will always stand up and fight for anyone who wants to work hard and provide for their family.
Premier Jason Kenney says the province's supply chain is at risk and Alberta is seeing massive inflation following the federal government's decision to impose a vaccine mandate on truckers. Kenney says the feds really need to stop being so careless with this decision.
That bad situation has been made worse by the Trudeau government's reckless decision to impose a quarantine requirement on unvaccinated truckers coming from the United States, which has further stressed supply chains, and that will further create issues around availability of food, essential products, pushing up in prices at the worst possible time.
Kenney also says there's no reason for a mandate since most truckers are already vaccinated. The Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms filed a lawsuit against the federal government seeking to strike down Ottawa's mandatory COVID-19 vaccine requirements for air travelers. Now, to discuss this in more detail is the lead lawyer on the case, Keith Wilson. Keith joins us now from St. Albert, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton. Keith, the court action is on behalf of several Canadians?
Yes, and a very prominent one, former Premier Brian Peckford, who happens to be the last surviving signatory and drafter of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
The World Health Organization is urging countries to lift or ease traffic bans as they do not provide added value and contribute to the economic and social stress. Now, you say the legal challenge cites direct violations of charter rights. Which rights specifically?
Well, the first and most obvious one is all Canadians have the right to travel freely within the country by any means and to leave the country and come back to the country. And this order by the government, the federal government, prohibits a specific identifiable group of Canadians from their fundamental right to travel freely in a country that also happens to be the second largest country by landmass in the world. We're not talking about Luxembourg here.
Last October, the Trudeau Liberals announced that anyone traveling by air, train, or ship must be fully vaccinated. And the vaccine mandate has prevented around 6 million Canadians from traveling within Canada and flying abroad. Now, you say a big issue is how many cannot help sick loved ones or just get away for a holiday?
It's impacting people in terrible ways. They've got dying relatives or relatives that need to be cared for. We've got Canadian citizens who happen to be temporarily living in other countries. We've got one in South Africa, one in England, and they're caring for family members as we do as caring individuals and responsible citizens. But now, if they come back home to carry on their normal lives, they're going to be prevented from going back to care for those loved ones. And there's many other examples. We've got people who are being prevented from getting to work. We've got a fellow who works up in a mine up in the Northwest Territories, and he's being prevented from working. We've got young athletic males who are concerned about the risk-benefit analysis. They know the risks of COVID, and they know the documented risks of the vaccine. So in Canada, we've never been at this Rubicon. The government's crossed it. They're violating charter rights, and this challenge is to seeking to strike down this order that is discriminating against Canadians.
Thanks so much, Keith. That was Keith Wilson, lawyer with the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, joining us from St. Albert, Alberta. The Alberta government has made a small change to the eligibility requirement for PCR testing. Children under the age of 2 can now be tested for COVID-19 with a PCR test at any AHS assessment centres. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dean Henshaw, says this change is the best approach right now for kids who are symptomatic.
Since rapid tests are currently not licensed for use in children under the age of 2. The ability to be tested affects the length of their required isolation due to COVID, as these children are also not eligible for vaccination.
Henshaw says if a child becomes symptomatic and they test positive, they need to isolate for 10 days. Alberta Health Services and the United Nurses of Alberta have ratified a new collective agreement. The 4-year deal expires on March 31st, 2024. It sets out the terms and conditions for the more than 30,000 registered nurses and registered psychiatric nurses. Now, in a statement, Finance Minister Travis Taves had this to say: Alberta's nurses have played a critical role throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We appreciate that this agreement balances the need to keep healthcare spending comparative to that in other jurisdictions, while ensuring Alberta's registered nurses receive fair and competitive compensation for the critical services they provide. The Celebrate Recovery program was started over 30 years ago to help assist those who battle personal demons in their lives. As Micah Quinn explains now, the ministry leader for the Lethbridge program says he started as a participant many years ago after his own struggles brought him there.
I come from a background of alcoholism and also drug addiction, and almost to the point of death. I was on the streets of Calgary in 2006.
After Al Nelson got off the streets of Calgary, he was able to start another program called Teen Challenge, which he says brought him back in the right direction and helped him battle his addictions. After that, Nelson says he had a relapse 7 years ago.
I got lazy and I started having a drink now and again, and I had too many one night and wrecked my car, and ended up with a lot of consequences over that, of course, with driver's license and things like that, and started to take my own sobriety seriously because I was working so much on helping others that I wasn't doing anything for me anymore. So got really refocused again, and again, still strive to help others, but I also have others who speak into my life. I have people who hold me accountable.
Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program based off of the Beatitudes from the book of Matthew in the Bible.
What the program does is help people address any kind of issue, life issue that they're dealing with, whether that be a hurt, a small hurt or a big hurt, a trauma or an abuse or something like that. Some sort of a hang up that they're dealing with. It could be things like perfectionism or just depression, anxiety, things like that we might call a hang up. And then also, some of the more addiction related behaviors like drug addictions, alcoholism, gambling addictions, shopping, things like that.
There are currently 35,000 Celebrate Recovery churches around the world. Small group sessions take place at Park Meadows Baptist Church every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The pandemic has brought with it large changes in how we access mental health resources here in our city. Lethbridge Family Services received a huge donation of funds on Friday to offset some of those issues. Staff from the centre say this money will continue to help out children and youth who are in need of obtaining those resources. The donors did not want to disclose the exact amount, but say the funds will be impactful. Staff say calls have doubled in the past year for those who are seeking help.
January of 2022, we've already almost doubled our calls from January of 2021. Our calls have increased a lot, and the complexity of people's needs have increased a lot too, because as we're finding with COVID, as they're going along, people that have been in family violence situation and have experienced sexual violence, they are, they've kind of held on. They've kind of just, held it in, and now they're going, they can't do it anymore. And so they're looking for services to support them.
Lethbridge Family Services say with this new money, they'll be able to hire more staff to be able to help out those in our community who need it the most. Last year, the centre served over 1,700 seeking help from traumas like sexual or family violence. The Lethbridge Pronghorns and Big Brothers and Big Sisters are teaming up next month for an exciting mentorship program. As Angela Stewart explains now, a former athlete of the Pronghorns who is now a member of Big Brothers and Big Sisters say this is a very exciting opportunity.
Many of our athletes are preparing for conference playoffs and national championships, and so adding this on at a time when they're very busy is great to see.
Young athletes of the Lethbridge Pronghorns will soon be stepping into some bigger shoes and will have the opportunity to mentor some kids around the community.
The idea of our athletes being able to get back out in the community, it's been a couple of years of being unable to do that with everything that's going on, and so that, along with the opportunity to spend time with youth.
This new partnership will allow student athletes to be able to connect with the kids either in a group setting or one-on-one.
So we'll have, say, from our basketball teams, we'll have 4 or 5 of our athletes go into a school and work in a group environment with some kids, so they'll focus on sports or different types of activities in a group environment.
So far, about 70 Pronghorns have signed up to become mentors.
Us as an organization are extremely excited for this opportunity to be able to partner with Pronghorn Athletics.
This is the biggest intake Big Brothers and Big Sisters has seen.
It'll allow us to reach as many schools as we possibly can, just really expand our impact on children in the community.
You used to be a Pronghorn?
Yes, correct. Yep, former women's hockey player.
Ray, a former Lethbridge Pronghorn herself, tells me it's exciting to be able to see young athletes give back to the community, something she says she didn't have the opportunity to do.
I was never given the opportunity, as these student athletes are currently, to volunteer with an organization and to give back in the community in that way.
Ray believes student athletes already are seen as role models in the community, and with this new partnership, it will help them to be able to give back even more and hopefully inspire some young kiddos. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
A provincial police force may not be the best idea. That's according to Lethbridge County Reeve Tory Campbell. Campbell recently joined Bridge City News to explain why the province should instead put more efforts into supporting the Rcmp. He says what's currently in place is more than adequate.
This, quite frankly, just seems like a bit of a distraction at this point in time. We have a police service that's working for us. I think there's ways to work within the current system to make that system work better for our residents, other rural residents. And, there's a lot of opportunity to spend some provincial tax dollars in a lot of meaningful ways that I think that could really directly impact Albertans. And I'm just not sure at this point in time, we've been convinced that a provincial police service is the best route.
Reeve Campbell will have more on how provincial funding should be used to support policing efforts in rural communities. That Q&A is coming up later in our broadcast. The passenger in a car that was involved in a hit-and-run death of a Calgary police officer, Andrew Harnett, has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Amir Abdulrahman entered a guilty plea of manslaughter in December.
You know, the sentence is higher than I hoped it would be. I understand Justice Hall's reasons, it was a serious case, and anytime it involves a police officer, it's a serious case, and sentences are across the board always higher. But for my client's minimal involvement, it was higher than I'd hoped for.
It was thorough, it was lengthy. We know that Justice Hall had all the available evidence, all the body-worn camera footage in this matter, so he had a full view of the actions of Mr. Abdulrahman. On a personal level, on behalf of the prosecution, I'm disappointed in the overall number. We asked for 8 to 9 years because we felt that was appropriate. We felt that took into account his age, his guilty plea, but most importantly, we felt that took into account the grave risk that police officers face anytime they're on shift.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says there's still time and space for diplomacy when it comes to dealing with Russia. Tens of thousands of Russian troops have amassed on Ukraine's border in what many view as a potential invasion.
Conflict is not inevitable. There is still time and space for diplomacy. The United States, in lockstep with our allies and partners, has offered Russia a path away from crisis and toward greater security. And the Department of Defense will continue to support those diplomatic efforts. Second, the United States remains committed to helping Ukraine defend itself through security assistance material. And Mr. Putin can do the right thing as well. There's no reason that this situation has to devolve into conflict. He can choose to de-escalate. He can order his troops away. He can choose dialogue and diplomacy. Whatever he decides, the United States will stand with our allies and partners.
Well, we had double-digit temperatures in Lethbridge once again, and so far a nice weekend is shaping up. Complete weather details are on deck. Well, it was another mild day in southwestern Alberta as we hit 10 degrees once again. Jeanette Rocher is here now to discuss how tonight is shaping up and details of our extended forecast.
This evening's forecast includes a few clouds and a west wind at 50 kilometers per hour, gusting to 70 km with an overnight low of 3 degrees. Saturday, the same amount of wind, but sunny and a high of 8. Sunday, also 8 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Monday's high +1 with partly cloudy skies. Monday evening, we could see some snowfall and a rapid drop in temperature. Periods of snow will continue into Tuesday and a high of only -15. Wednesday's high also -15 with a mix of sun and cloud. And Thursday, the mercury will rise only slightly to a high of -11. The average high for this time of year is -1 and the average low is -13. The record high for this day was set back in 1988 when it was 14 degrees. The record low was -38 in 1969. The sun rose this morning at 8:09 and the sunset is at 5:19 p.m., giving us 9 hours and 10 minutes of daylight today. Looking at Friday's highs across the nation, on the west coast, both Victoria and Vancouver will see fog dissipating in the morning, but with increasing clouds and a high of 6 degrees, Vancouver will also see rain beginning late in the afternoon. A mix of sun and cloud in Edmonton with a high of 4 degrees and wind chill. Mainly sunny in Calgary and a high of 8 degrees, winds at 20 kilometers per hour. Over in the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon will see sunshine and fog patches in the morning and a high of -4, sunny and a high of -3 in Regina. Winnipeg will see a 30% chance of flurries, wind gusts to 50 km and a high of -8, with a wind chill feeling like -21. In central Canada, an extreme cold warning is in effect for both Toronto and Ottawa. A period of very cold wind chill is expected tonight and Saturday morning, with wind chill values between -30 and -35 in those cities. A risk of frostbite is also expected. Montreal will see a mix of sun and cloud with wind gusts to 40 km. A high of -14 is expected there, but wind chill factors could make it feel much colder. Winter storm warnings and special weather statements are in effect for much of Atlantic Canada this weekend. In Fredericton, 20 centimeters of heavy and blowing snow is expected this Saturday, with winds gusting to 60 km and a high of -11. Halifax will see a high of 2 degrees with heavy snow at times changing to ice pellets or freezing rain. Northeast winds will gust to 80 km at times throughout the morning. And Charlottetown will see heavy and blowing snow changing to periods of ice or freezing rain, high of -1 without the wind chill. In St. John's, Newfoundland, snow is expected with a high of 0 and winds gusting to 70 km.
The federal deficit for the first 8 months of the current fiscal year was less than a third of the red ink recorded a year earlier. The Finance Department says the deficit from April to November of last year was $73.7 billion. That compares to $232 billion for the same period in 2020. Program spending, excluding actuarial losses, dropped 25% to $289.5 billion, while revenue was up 34% to $239.2 billion. Public debt charges for the 8-month period was about $3 billion higher than 2021 at $16.5 billion. Kia is recalling more than 410,000 vehicles to fix a problem that can stop airbags from deploying in a crash. The recall covers certain Forte cars from 2017 and 2018, also certain Sedona minivans and the small SUV Soul from 2017 through 2019. The South Korean automaker says the airbag control computer cover can contact a memory chip and damage the electrical circuit, which could stop the airbags from inflating. It says dealers will inspect the computer and either update the software or replace it. Cineplex has filed a motion with the Ontario Court of Appeal seeking alternate damages, even if a ruling ordering Cineworld Group to pay it $1.24 billion is overturned. Cineworld filed an appeal earlier this month of a lower court ruling that found it was not justified in walking away from its $2.18 billion deal to buy Cineplex. Now the Canadian movie chain has filed a cross appeal asking for alternative damages because of its diminished value and loss of performance. Cineworld says it does not agree with the cross appeal and will not pay damages while the matter is ongoing. Now here's a look at today's markets, which have rebounded nicely today. The TSX was up 197 points in the day to 20,742. The Dow was up 564 points to 34,725. The S&P 500 was up 105 points to 4432, and the Nasdaq was up 417 points on the day to 13,771. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 21 cents to 86.82 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 36 cents to 4.64 US. Gold was down 5.90 to 17.9154 US an ounce, and silver was down 30 cents to 22.47 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.97 per bushel, barley's at $9.47, canola's at $22.88, and corn is at $10.87 per bushel. Live cattle were up 88 cents to 138.70. Feeder cattle were up 13 cents to 159.63. And lean hogs were up 90 cents to 87.93. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.31 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Bridge City News has joined the Freedom Convoy in Northern Ontario and is making its way to Ottawa. Watch for BCN on location, bringing you interviews with truckers and politicians who will be attending the rally fighting the Trudeau Liberal COVID-19 mandates. Also watch for Bridge City News at the Coutts border crossing, as truckers there also have a powerful message about the federal government mandates. A Lethbridge County reeve says Alberta really does not need a provincial police force and that the Rcmp are doing more than an adequate job. He'll share details with BCN's Jeanette Rocher in just a moment.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or visit their website, lethbridgelegalguidance.ca. Join the Helen Schuler Nature Center staff for a fun introduction to winter survival and test your skills through a series of team challenges. Taking place Saturday, February 5th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., this workshop will teach you valuable skills that you can use in your next winter adventure. Cost is $10 per person and is open for those 16 and up. The workshop takes place outside, so come prepared and dress for the weather. For details and to sign up, visit leisure.lethbridge.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Well, the government of Alberta is giving serious consideration to replacing the RCMP with an independent Alberta Provincial Police Service, with the potential of that transition beginning in the year 2025. Now, a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers outlines that this transition could cost $366 million. Now, last year, the provincial government began shifting the cost of policing to municipalities, including Lethbridge County, but the county's position is that Alberta municipalities have not been adequately consulted on this matter. Joining me now is Lethbridge County Reeve Tori Campbell. Reeve Campbell, thanks so much for joining me today on this very important matter. So great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Lethbridge County's position is that the municipalities were not properly consulted on this. So tell us more about this. What exactly happened? How did this come about? How was the county informed of this?
Sure. So over the last, I would say, couple of years here, I mean, we'd initially heard whispers that this was something that it was being considered. I guess to take a step back, coming out of the Fair Deal panel that the government of Alberta had commissioned, coming from that panel, one of the recommendations to come out of there was that the province explore the possibility of a transition to a provincial police service. As far as my recollection goes, it definitely wasn't one of the top recommendations. It was actually quite a bit lower, received quite a bit less support. But nonetheless, here we are today. It obviously has gained some momentum from the province's side, and we're on the cusp of starting some engagement sessions with the province here over the coming months.
Mm-hmm. So what are your main concerns about shifting from RCMP to a provincial police force? Is it mainly cost?
I think, yeah, definitely. Cost is obviously a paramount concern to the county. We have a very limited amount of resources to work with, and any further strain on that has to go towards policing is obviously of great concern. We're happy with the current arrangement that we have with the RCMP. We fully acknowledge that there's work to be done to improve that relationship and to increase that level of service within the county. But at the same time, we feel that we can work within that current relationship, build and strengthen that, and come out in a favorable position.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about your local detachment of RCMP. You must have a great relationship with them. What are their thoughts and feelings on this? Are they neutral about it? Are they happy? Are they upset? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so when we travel to Edmonton for our RMA convention, we have the opportunity to meet with K Division and talk with some higher ranking officials there within the RCMP. And we've relayed to them and will continue to that we appreciate the support that we receive. We appreciate the relationship. And what they've communicated to us is that they're very much engaged in working with us. There's been no indication from anyone on the RCMP side of the table that they want to move away from policing. I know that's kind of been bantied about a bit, but there's been no indication that there's any appetite from the RCMP to move away from that. They want to provide a service, and they want to provide it in a cost-effective manner to municipalities.
Mm-hmm. Is there any talk on what will happen to the current RCMP? Will they just have to move elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean that's so many huge unknowns. I know that when we've talked to provincial ministers, there's been a suggestion that maybe that if there were to be a transition to a provincial police service, that some of those members here in Alberta could be absorbed into that provincial police service. Obviously, there would have to be a large number of them move over just to fill those vacancies on the provincial police service side. As with many things in this issue, a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah,
to this
so
point.
many unknowns, absolutely. So let's talk dollars and cents. So how much was Lethbridge County asked to contribute to this provincial police force?
Well, at this point in time, that's, I think, our biggest concern is that through the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, costing is one of the more glaring absences in that. There is that $366 million potential transitional cost that you mentioned, but after that, it really doesn't spell out what the ongoing costs will be, and additionally what that would mean to municipalities. I know the Premier has stated that he doesn't intend to download any further policing costs to municipalities. But without some concrete evidence to back that up, we just don't feel comfortable moving forward at this time.
Yeah, totally. And I believe I read somewhere in that report that last year the county was asked to contribute, was it $350,000? And then it's going to rise again in this next coming year to $469,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. With the information that we currently hold, from that baseline where we started to looking out into the coming years, creeping up on that $700,000 a year figure would be our contribution from the municipality to the provincial government to offset that cost of policing in our municipality.
Right. Is this going to be a yearly burden on the county indefinitely, or is there like an end in sight, or does it just go on and on?
That's the $1 million question right now. Just looking at what's happened Where we are provincially, the provincial state of affairs as it pertains to finances, I would be shocked if that cost to us, the municipality, were to decrease. Obviously hopeful that if nothing else, it holds. I think all along we have acknowledged the fact that we receive a service, and I think there was an appetite to participate in paying for that service. But I think there's a pretty large discrepancy between the service that we're receiving and the cost for that. And as that ties into the potential provincial police service, there hasn't been any assurances made to us that if we were to continue paying at a similar level, we would receive an increased level of service, which obviously is concerning.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, like if this financial burden is put on the county for a provincial police force year after year, what is this taking money out of? So what are the citizens of the county going to be missing out on as a result? Or is it going to just increase their tax burden?
I think you nailed it on the head. I think that it just makes our job, and not just Lethbridge County. We're talking about municipalities throughout Alberta. It just makes our job that much more difficult. Costs continue to rise. We're dealing with some quite scary inflation figures right now, and the fact of the matter is we continue to be downloaded upon, and that just means that, as you said, we're trying to be creative. We are being creative. We're trying to stretch that dollar as far as we can, but there comes a point where we just can't keep up anymore, and tough choices have to be made. And unfortunately, that ultimately, is going to mean reductions to levels of service, or that raise in taxes, like you said.
Right, and nobody wants that, especially these days. So what about other counties? Have you had the opportunity to talk to other municipalities? Is the cost, does it go by population? How is that figured out? Or do you know, is that one of those unknowns again?
No, the current model, that there is under the current model, there definitely are those factors that come into play that would impact how much you're paying. Population being one of those. Our discussions with rural municipalities predominantly have kind of fallen in line with our feelings. I think they're deeply concerned as well. At the end of the day, I think we all acknowledge that there's a lot of challenges facing not only rural Alberta, but the rest of Alberta as well. And this, quite frankly, just seems like a bit of a distraction at this point in time. We have a police service that's working for us. I think there's ways to work within the current system to make that system work better for our residents, other rural residents. And there's a lot of opportunity to spend some provincial tax dollars in a lot of meaningful ways that I think that could really directly impact Albertans. And I'm just not sure at this point in time we've been convinced that a provincial police service is the best route.
Yeah, exactly. Does the county have a solution to this? Instead of just coming at it with a problem that we don't like this, is there?
Well, the province is offering us some opportunity here. Like I said, they are hosting numerous engagement sessions throughout the province here throughout the coming months, and we're hopeful that when we get a chance to speak at these, that we'll be heard. We continue to share this message with our MLAs. And any minister that's willing to give us the time. We stress the importance that this bears to us, and we're hopeful that they'll listen. And ultimately, if the decision is made that we do eventually transition to a provincial police service, that the costs can be managed, and that we as municipalities have a seat at the table in formulating what this will look like and how we govern it moving forward.
Interesting. Now, I understand that you have been contacting your local MLAs, but you feel that your concerns have sort of fallen on deaf ears. Was there just no response whatsoever?
I will admit it's a tough position for our MLAs to be put into. This obviously is coming. This is coming top down from the provincial government. It's a mandate that the premier and some of his senior ministers are quite committed to, especially exploring ways that the province can become more independent from Ottawa, and the rest of us are ultimately passengers in some of those discussions and how things are moving forward. So, we're fortunate we do have a good relationship with our MLAs, but I think they can. I hope that they're listening to our message. I hope that they're carrying that up the chain. But I can't say with great certainty if they're having any success spreading that message as well.
Wow. And then as far as private citizens, what's next? What can people do?
Well, I think that part of our thought process as a municipality was to, push out some information on this, make people aware that this is being considered. We as municipal leaders, I think we're well aware of what I shouldn't say well aware. We try to make ourselves as aware as possible of what's going on, and fully, knowing full well that we have access to a very limited amount of information at times. But what we can do is take that information, push that out to our residents, and try and make the greater public aware of this issue. I think it's something at the end of the day that's going to impact everyone in one way or another. So I think it's important that we can be that bridge and try and spread that information and just let people know where we're coming from, why we've taken this position, and what our goal is moving forward.
Fantastic. Lethbridge County Reeve Tory Campbell, thank you so much for joining me today on this important matter. Glad to have you on today.
You bet. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
The persecution of Christians around the world appears to be intensifying. Recent reports say an average of 17 followers of Jesus are killed each and every day in Nigeria alone. China and India have governments that are allegedly intent on eradicating Christianity altogether. To discuss this in more detail is Greg Musselman from Voice of the Martyrs Canada. Greg is the Minister at Large for the group and host of the podcast Closer to the Fire. Greg, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Always good to see you, Hal.
You too, brother. Now, before we discuss some of the countries outlined earlier, what's the situation like for Christians in Afghanistan since the Taliban regained control of the country?
Yeah, it is a difficult situation. I mean, not only for Christians, women, children. I mean, it's a real hard situation. But, particularly the followers of Jesus, I mean, they were already facing persecution, even before the Taliban came to power. But, you got radical Islamic groups, you have violent protests, you have the political activity taking place and making it just a very dangerous place to live for Christians, and especially those who have converted from Islam to Christianity, which is the thousands of Christians that are in the country. Most of them come from Islamic backgrounds, so they're facing, beatings and torture, and some cases martyrdom. It's really hard. I was actually talking on my podcast recently, Hal, to a guy by the name of John Weaver. John is an American. He worked in Afghanistan for over 20 years, and he says it is so heartbreaking almost every day getting messages from people in Afghanistan, not only the Christians but the Muslims as well, saying we need to get out of here. It's dangerous. We're going to die if we're found out. So we need to be praying for our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. One of the things that's asked too is how many Christians are in Afghanistan. Some say as few as 3,000, maybe as many as 12,000. And as my friend John Weaver says, not enough. But they are definitely being targeted, as are others. Anybody seen collaborating with the groups outside of the Taliban are facing danger at this time.
Now, we've heard reports that the Taliban is actually going door to door looking for Christians and North Americans. What have you heard?
Yeah, I've been hearing reports of that as well. In fact, even just listening to some of the international news coming across, we don't hear as much about it in Canada now. It's kind of faded off the front pages of our newspapers and that. But what we are hearing, though, is that there's these summary executions taking place for those that oppose the Taliban. Now, even the Taliban is saying, no, we've changed. We're kind of a softer version now. We're not going to kill our enemies. We're going to forgive them. But the reality is that is not happening. Now, in some cases, there may be those in the Taliban. Sure, they're more political. They need the aid. I mean, they are a country that's supported by, countries like Canada. But there are those that even may be getting direction from the government, the Taliban government, to go around and, kill the enemies that they see as potentially coming back and being able to pull them from power. And so anybody seen as an enemy, including the Christians, are facing dangerous times. So again, this is a very volatile situation. But before we move off of Afghanistan, let me just say one thing here. When this first happened, a lot of, I think, well-meaning Christian organizations said, we're going to get all the Christians out of the country. Well, if that happens, what about the light of the gospel? What about the last 20 years, since the Taliban was pushed from, out of control there? I mean, they've been causing problems all along. But for those that have come to know Jesus, if they all leave, I mean, what would the situation be? And again, getting back to my friend John Weaver, he's talking to many of the Christians in Afghanistan are saying, we don't want to leave. We want to stay. The only hope for this broken nation, this nation that's been stuck in war, in repression for years and years, is Jesus. And so we're going to stay. We're going to risk our lives. On the other hand, as a dad, and seeing what's happening, especially when I think of my daughters and granddaughters now, is that I would not want them to live in Afghanistan, can't go to school, can't work. So I'd understand why believers and others want to leave the country, but, we need to be praying for, especially for those that want to stay.
Canada's moved forward with a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics, mostly due to China's poor record when it comes to human rights. How bad are the human rights violations of minorities in China?
They're terrible. I mean, when we hear about the Uyghur Muslims, in the western part of China, 1 to 3 million of those people are in basically concentration camps. It's a horrible situation. Yeah, but the human rights violations, are terrible there. Now, so you have the Uyghur Christians, or the Uyghur Muslims, and there are some Uyghur Christians as well. You have other minority groups, including Christians, although when you think about China, 100 to 120 million Christians, it's hard to consider them just a minority. But you've got, the Communist Party of China. Their ideology is, of course, atheistic. They don't want religion in there, and they are very bent on trying to eradicate the church, although we know that's not going to happen. I mean, from a theological, biblical perspective, the gates of hell won't prevail against the church. But, I talked to people like Dr. Bob Fu. He is the founder and president of China Aid, one of our partners with the Voice of the Martyrs. They work with persecuted Christians and other religious minorities. He's saying, you know what, this is a horrible situation. Since 2018, President Xi and his government have made it one of their, priorities to try to eliminate religion from the country. But, in talking to Bob Fu about this, and he was telling me, Purdue University, secular university in Indiana, released a study 3 years ago looking at 100 years of religion in China, not just Christianity, but the sociologists and, that are studying these things estimate there's between 100 to 130 million Christians in China. And if there's not severe persecution, that number could jump to well over 200 million by 2030. But it's a question, the severe persecution, because we've seen how persecution has actually been used to raise up the church in China. And so, we think that and believe that, the persecution has been used to grow the church in China, but extreme persecution may cause people, to want to back down. And the interesting thing is, they've attacked the underground church, the house churches, any group that's not registered by the government. But now even the Chinese Communist Party is going after the government-controlled churches, the 3 self-patriotic churches, tearing down the crosses all over the country and also arresting some of the government pastors. So it's a very difficult situation. And, we've got situations even right now where there's a church near in the southern part of China called the Shenzhen Holy Reformed Church, where 27 adults and 32 children actually left the country. They're led by a pastor by the name of Pan Yong-won, and they went to South Korea, Jeju Island, because the persecution became so severe that people are being tortured, imprisoned, and so they're now trying to get to America through Texas. Actually, there's a number of churches down there that have said that we will take these people in because, again, talking to Bob Fu, saying that if they are sent back to China, they will be tortured. They may, be imprisoned and in some cases killed. So this ramping up, of the Chinese government in this, where they're trying to bring them into the ideology, and they see Christianity and other religions getting in the way of what they want to do. But I think it's, and I would, hopefully our country will join at least the political boycott and put more pressure on China. Although, as we've seen in the past, they don't seem to bow down to pressure in any real way.
India apparently also has a campaign that has led to an increase of religiously motivated persecution against Christians. How is that happening?
Well, yeah, and you're right. The level of violence against Christians in India by Hindu extremists, and this is really being fueled by the BJP, which is the governing party, Prime Minister Modi in the nation, that they want to eliminate anything that doesn't go along again with their ideology and their religion of Hinduism. So this deadly campaign really coincides with the Indian government's agenda to turn India into a Hindu nation. And as a result, Christians are facing an increase in religiously motivated persecution. And, we look at a number of these states and the anti-conversion laws that are taking place. So you have Jharkhand, you have Uttar Pradesh, you have Tamil Nadu, you have Chhattisgarh, now considered the most dangerous places, to be a Christian. So you have beatings, arrest, church destruction, and at times death are occurring. And I just give you one example. There's a 16-year-old boy by the name of Nitish Kumar. He's from the northern Indian state of Bihar, and he had acid thrown on him this past summer, left him with severe burns, over 60% of his body. Wow. Now, a local pastor got Nitish to a clinic. They treated him and then sent him to a severe burn clinic as well. Unfortunately, he died of his injuries. Trying to find out the motive behind this, really unknown at this point. But there are members of the Christian community that believe it because of his Christian activities, along with his brother, that Nitish and his brother, they were holding prayer meetings, and the two actually had come to faith in Jesus 2 years ago. So that really is seen by these Hindu radicals as something that they're not going to tolerate. And as a result of that, they take these actions. And then when the Christians go to the police to, bring charges or, to bring a complaint, the, situation is often ignored. So, things are definitely increasing. I mean, we look at China, we look at India, the two, most populated nations in the world. And there really is this concerted effort to try to eliminate Christianity, or at least to slow down the growth of the gospel.
Now, Greg, we're constantly hearing of Christian villages being attacked by militant Muslims in Nigeria. Why isn't the government there doing more to protect its citizens?
Hal, that is a great question. And I have asked it, from a number of our partners, in Nigeria. Pastor Yunusa Madu, he is with Christian Solidarity Worldwide, also the General Secretary for the Evangelical Winning All Denomination. And it said, why are these things continue to happen? I mean, just last week, again, a village was attacked, primarily a Christian village in northern Nigeria. 10 believers were killed, homes were destroyed, church burned down, and it goes on and on and on. And I know that Yunusa told me, every morning he wakes up, it seems there's another attack. So why isn't the government doing more? Either they are not all that engaged, they don't care, they say they do. There's always these public statements coming out that they're shocked and they're appalled by what's going on, but they don't seem to be doing much. And, whether they don't have the capability or the political will to do something. But the sad part is that many of our brothers and sisters in Christ are constantly being killed. I mean, just from the first 200 days of this year, and I know that these statistics will soon be updated, but you've had over 3,400 Christians killed just in the first 200 days of 2021. And then last year, that's about the same amount that were killed for the whole of last year. So it's increasing. As you mentioned off the top, 17 believers on an average being killed every single day. And this just goes on and on. And one of the things I think it's important for us, Hal, to remember is that these are our brothers and sisters in Christ. These are individuals. You know, think of Pastor Silas Yakubu Ali, Kaduna State. Recently, he went out for a pastoral visit. Well, the next morning, he didn't show up at home. He had been murdered by militant Muslims. Now, whether it was the Boko Haram or the Fulani herdsmen, at that time, we didn't hear anybody claiming, responsibility. And then the day they discovered Pastor Ali's body, they also found out that another 10 Christians or so had been killed in a church that he was also giving oversight of. It's not only the killing of the Christians, and then there's the kidnapping of the girls and the women forced into these marriages, often these young girls with older Muslim men, they're forced into Islam. It is a horrible situation. Now, also might say too, is that it's not only Christians that are being killed by these radical groups, these militant Islamic groups, but it's also Muslims that are sympathetic towards Christians, or they don't go along with this very radical idea of Islam, and they are also suffering as well. And we need to remember, these even people in the Boko Haram and the Fulani herdsmen, we know of those that have come to Jesus when they see the way that our brothers and sisters are dying, the way, even in the midst of horrible situations, that there's that peace, and they're coming to know Jesus. So we don't look at them as the enemy. Yes, they're doing horrible things, but we also know that God loves them too. And that is the message that I continue to hear through Nigeria, through at least the churches I've been in contact with, and I've been there a number of times, is they continue to preach forgiveness and love and mercy. Many of these people, they have no idea what they're doing in terms of the violence that they're perpetrating against the followers of Jesus. So our prayers need to be, for our brothers and sisters, certainly in Christ, those that love Jesus, and also for those persecutors, because Jesus told us even to be praying and to blessing our persecutors. So we need to be doing that. But Nigeria continues to be a hotbed. I'll be honest, I read about it almost every day. Something else is happening, and it's tragic.
Have to keep them in our prayers, absolutely. Greg Musselman is the Minister at Large for the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. He also hosts the Closer to the Fire podcast. Greg, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.